very much. Welcome to Stoke on Tech. So this one's largely about Agile and DevOps. We've got two great talks. We've got Stephen Walters, who's going to speak first of all, technical architecture lead from Accenture, I believe, who's going to be talking to us about DevOps. And then we've got James Pels, who's founder lead consultant of Peak Consultancy, I believe. Yeah, who's going to be talking to us about vMost.
A little bit about myself and who I am. So Stephen Walters, my title is actually a Tech Architecture Delivery Manager, and I work for Accenture. Accenture, large world organisation. Are we number one or number two consultancy in the world? Number one, yeah, we are the biggest in the world now. About 435,000 employees worldwide. But we like to operate more in a local kind of basis. We like to work closely with our clients and identify with our clients within there. And one of the things that we've been working very closely on within the community at large is around DevOps and the work that we're doing within DevOps. So what I'm going to do is, and that's not there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give now a talk about DevOps to try and answer the question, what is DevOps? Because that's the most common question that gets asked. And then to give you a wholly unsatisfactory answer, which you're not going to like and you're going to walk away with very unhappy. But after you think about it after a bit, you will realise what the actual answer is. Very complicated, I know, but it will make sense later on. So we'll look at what some of the common myths are, what things are involved in DevOps, what are not involved in DevOps, and what does this all mean for us at the end of the day, and how we actually operate. So let's get a bit interactive first of all. Let's get 7 words from you, the audience, that you think is something essential to DevOps, what you believe DevOps is about. Let's have some volunteers. Come on. Yes?
Automation.
Automation. Number 1. Who? Just show of hands, who agrees with that? Yeah. But anything else?
Monitoring.
Monitoring. Monitoring at the back, show of hands. Yeah, okay. Anything else?
We use the word continuous.
Continuous.
Yeah.
Okay, continuous. Interesting. Show of hands, anybody who agrees with that? Yeah? Come on, let's have one more. Yes.
Scaling.
Scaling. In what way? Growing. And shrinking, yeah. Okay, right. And thoughts here, yeah?
So I've been saying the main product teams actually define some of their own release mechanisms as opposed to having one small team trying to handle everything for a very large company.
Sorry, say again.
So,
that was really quick, I was expecting one word, sorry.
Allowing product teams have some more influence and design about how they release and having a slim, like design tooling as opposed to having to design everything about how to release everything for a huge company.
Okay, no, that's interesting. I like that. I like that description. And sorry, yours again was scaling. So on scaling, who agrees? Yeah, a few hands there. And on this around design,
kind of like scaling people as opposed to scaling just like
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah. Who agree? Yeah. Okay, right. So we've heard some of the description there. Actually, there's some pretty good descriptions in there. Some of the other things that we've heard talk about is it's about being in the cloud. That's a common one that we hear. Another one is it's about somebody, one person, fulfilling all of the roles on the life cycle. So this person can capture the requirements, do the design, do the architecture, do the development, do the testing, release the thing, support it. There's a whole raft of stories out there about what DevOps is. But ultimately, the one question everybody asks is, really, what is DevOps? Can we please have a single definition of DevOps?
Is it a set of principles like that?
We'll come into it. A set of principles. Right. The answer is sort of yes. I said it was going to be unsatisfactory, this answer was. So, what it is and what it isn't. Well, you wanted a set of principles. It's all about comms. It's all about keeping calms. Now, he says walking across the screen, which he shouldn't really do. That phrase calms comes from one of the authors of this, the DevOps Handbook, Jez Humble. I think actually he uses calm and the S was added later on. But it principally means these 5 things. It's about culture. It's about how people behave and the way that they do the things they do. It's about automation. It's about finding the right tool for the right job. It's about lean thinking. It's about keeping it simple. Okay? No waste. It's about measurement, monitoring back there. It's about knowing that you have improved. How can you know you're doing things better and you're getting better and you're doing things that meet certain criteria unless you're measuring? Finally, it's about sharing. Hello, that's what I'm here for. Bit of sharing. But it's also about sharing within an organisation. It's about that experimentation, about learning and expressing and sharing those ideas. So let's just quickly go through each of these points. The definition of culture. You know, it's usually at this point that somebody brings up Wikipedia with a definition of it. And as we all know from Abraham Lincoln's quote on the internet, only 33% of facts are actually accurate on the internet. But this is from the Oxford English Dictionary, which states that the arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. For me, the key thing there is it's about being regarded collectively. It's not what about a single person does or a single individual. It's about what is regarded collectively. It's about what's regarded as a group. And it's about all of those things. But in particular, it's about the ideas, customs, and social behaviour of a particular people or society. Well, when we're implementing DevOps, we're typically implementing this within a business. We're trying to support some sort of business, an enterprise organisation. It could be a small organisation, could be extremely large. Well, that organisation is made up of a group of people. So it's also about how that group of people interact and how they work with each other. It's about the culture within that enterprise. So when you mentioned about the scaling and how the people operate and what they do and how they work, this is sort of where you were getting towards. But it tends to be much bigger than that. So, for example, these are typically some of the cultures that we have to look at within DevOps. So, fear of failure. That's a common one. That's one that's existed for many years. It's one that's talked about in Agile, but it's very much so within DevOps. Because within this, what we're trying to say to people is, failure is good. In the past, with your Gantt charts and your projects and with your enterprise architects, you're asking them to predict what is going to happen in 2 years' time, and by the way, you'd be able to be 100% accurate. And nothing is going to change in that time, is it? Absolutely nothing is going to change. What this is about accepting the fact that things do change, and as things change, it means things may stop working. But that failure is an opportunity to learn. It's the experimental method. That's what it's about. Try something, see if it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, potentially even better. It's about, and I've just talked about predictability and having to predict in 2 months' time where you're going to be and so on. But it's about having more predictability in the way that you operate and the way that you work. It's about knowing that when you do something, there is going to be a result. You are going to achieve something at the end of it. It's also about letting go of responsibility. A few years back, I was involved in a transformation, and they were struggling. They were really, really struggling to get it over the line. And when I asked them why, they said, well, it's our MD. He keeps coming down and telling us how we're supposed to do things. And it was only the day that he realised, actually, I've got to let go. Because these guys are the ones who are responsible for delivering. I am going to give them that responsibility. It's no longer on me to start directing and telling these guys how to work. He gave them the freedom to operate the way they wanted to do. You know what? It changed. It changed overnight. It's also about accepting accountability. What do I mean by that? Well, if the blame culture doesn't work, it's not my fault. And that's what we're talking about there. We're talking about accepting accountability. And that sometimes comes from the fear of failure. Because of the fear of failure, people are not wanting to take accountability for things. But because we can accept now that there's potential failure, we can take accountability for what we do. We take ownership. We actually work this through. Be big by thinking small. This is very much that agile way of thinking. How do you eat the elephant? Break it down into smaller chunks. And that's very much the way within the DevOps and the way that we operate within DevOps, how we go about delivering. Acceptance of difference and acceptance of change. In today's society and in today's culture, that's something that has been seriously tested. Our ability to accept that there are differences within the world. And so it is the case with how you go about delivering, how you develop and what you develop and what it is that you actually create and how you go about testing it and the work that you do in that. There are going to be differences in the way that things are done, the way that one team operates from another, the preference for certain tools that you're going to use. So it's acceptance of the fact that, you know what, you're doing something different, but you're doing a good job. Get on with it.
Here's a big word that seems to be missing there, and that's trust.
Trust. Actually, yeah. Yeah. I mean, these are just 7 examples of that within the culture. But trust, absolutely right. Trust is a very big one. Especially in an organisation, if you're in an organisation that has been hit hard, that has struggled in the past, that has had problems time and time again, and that trust doesn't just mean internally, it can mean externally as well. We know that full well when we come in as consultants into an organisation. What's the phrase? Nobody likes to be told their baby is ugly. You know, we quite often go into an organisation and they're bringing us in because they've got problems. They know they've got problems. It doesn't work.
So you need a bit of tact.
Yeah, you need a bit of tact. And you have those interviews with people and they will say, oh, this process doesn't work. This is broken. This is running slow. I can't get what I need from this team over here. And so you'll be surprised that there's always sometimes, you know, the odd dissenting voice in there that after you've recommended a set of changes to make things better, the response you get is, but that's not how we do things here. It happens, it happens. Fortunately, it's a rarity. But that brings me to the last one. And another common myth that you'll hear is it's all about open source tools. Open source tools are brilliant. They're a blessing. And in fact, with the solutions that we provide, they're nearly all open source tools. But it's not a hard and fast rule. It doesn't have to be just about open source tools. It's another myth within there. But the best open source tool, the one open source tool you've got to have with DevOps, is an open mind. It's about having that, again, it's coming to acceptance of differences. So, many tools. And there's a whole plethora of tools out there. Automation was mentioned, and automation is a big factor because the 3 typical kind of areas or reasons for somebody wanting to transform to DevOps come down to the 4 typical risk groups, which is around risk reduction and opportunity enablement. It's cost, total cost of ownership or cost of operation. It's down to time to market, or it's down to quality. Now, a lot of organisations go into this thinking their key factor is time to market. We want to get out there and deliver faster. Because let's face it, the world is changing so much faster. You know, organisations are putting apps on mobile phones like this, which you're downloading from the App Store, and people are providing instantaneous feedback through that store. That feedback forms your requirements for your next set of changes. How often are your apps having to be uploaded? The example that's given so many times is Netflix. Netflix do about 10,000 deliveries every day of their software. It's a massive amount of change. But that isn't necessarily what the key thing is that it's about. It's not just about the code, it's also about the quality. It's also about what your purpose is, what the business value is you're trying to achieve. So when it comes to tool selection, really you can have just about anything you want. There's a whole plethora, multiple combination of tools. Now within Accenture we do provide this thing called ADOP, which is the Accenture DevOps platform. Accenture DevOps platform. And what we do is we provide a base set of tools. Basically we provide you with an environment whereby you can go to the cloud and you can have your pipeline set up within 18 minutes. Currently it sits on AWS, but we're also looking to provide it through Azure, and I think we're also looking at Google, where we can host it. And all of these tools are sitting on containers, which means that you can spool any combination of them up at any one time. So that you could almost instantaneously have your environment there, ready for you to run, ready for you to develop, and ready for you to work with. And you are free to choose whichever tools you want. We call them cartridges. So you can take a base ADOP platform, which typically has Jenkins in it for your orchestration. Cucumber, I think, is on the base. Docker, OWASP for security. But you could swap any of them out and put a new one in. So the combination of tools that you can be using to support your DevOps way of working is limitless. It's as many tools as there are out there. In fact, from this page, I was thinking of putting more slides up which showed all the tools, but then I realised I'd probably be adding about another 13 slides into the deck, and I thought that's just a bit too much. So with regards to automation, you've got so many tools out there. Now, Lean. Who knows this Conway's Law? Who's heard of Conway's Law before? Okay, so this was from 1956. Conway proposed this law, and so far it's been, well, it's a law, it's not a theory. And it's been proven to be true, which is that organisations which design systems are constrained to produce designs which are copies of the communication structure of these organisations. What does that mean? Well, it means that typically if your development team is a huge development team made up of 50 people who all operate within one development team, you're typically going to develop one large monolithic application. It's going to be this huge client-server based system. But if your teams are smaller, then typically each team produces a smaller mechanism within there. But if those teams are not working together efficiently, then typically those areas that they develop are not going to communicate and are not going to work together efficiently. So when we're talking about Lean, and there's two particular concepts, not limited to these, but there are two particular concepts which are quite important. Microservices architecture and value stream mapping. So the microservices architecture, what that's about is about making use of that concept of think small to develop big. So you break your system down rather than into a monolithic structure into very small services. Each service just provides a function. So in other words, that function might be just there for a very short, limited amount of time. So for example, your login screen. So your login screen is sat there, and it's just that piece of code which just runs for the login, and that's it. And that's all it's needed for. And that runs on a container. And because a container can be quickly spooled up and spooled down, then in that case then you only need to bring the service up while it's being used and then get rid of it afterwards. It also means that as you make changes to any of these services, you are limiting the risk factor on your change. With a large monolithic structure, the moment you make a small change in there, you are potentially impacting the whole structure. But by hosting these things within these microservices, within these containers, you are containing the change to just that service, just that small function. So the concept behind DevOps is to have these smaller, agile teams, each of them responsible for a particular service or a particular function, but all of them communicating in extremely effective and lean and efficient ways. Value stream mapping. Who here knows the concept of value stream mapping? Yeah, I know you do. Simple as this really. You map out your end-to-end process. It can be from the point where your MD has a conversation on the golf course and has an idea through to the point where you turn the system off after 15 years. But your value stream is your end-to-end life cycle. And within there, you map where you're delivering value and where you have waste. And it's very binary. You're either delivering value or you're not delivering value. And the idea of value stream mapping is to look at your processes and identify how long each takes. So a particular process, for example, your build process may be taking 5 hours. But then your build doesn't get deployed to the environment until the end of the working day, in which case you've got another 3 hours when everything's sitting around doing nothing. Within your value stream map, you're delivering value for 5 hours, but then you've got 3 hours of waste, where it's sitting around doing nothing. So what you want to do is you want to get rid of that waste. You want to remove that so you're consistently delivering value. But you also want to look at the points where you're delivering value. Are you delivering value in the most efficient way? So your build processes, you may want to bring them down from 5 hours to 5 minutes through automation. Don't make the mistake, by the way, of thinking exactly like that automation is the be all and end all. I have had a conversation with, well, I had multiple conversations with them, and they were saying to me, oh, we don't need to worry about DevOps, we don't talk about automation, and we're automating our build processes, we're putting a new tool in. So, that's it. A few months later, I saw the same guy again. He was so enthusiastic. We did it, fantastic. We've put it in there, we've put our build automation in there. We've now got our builds down from 5 hours to 5 minutes. Fantastic, I said. How many deployments of that build are you doing a day? Oh, 1. How many were you doing before? 1. Right, so what you've actually done is you've introduced 4 hours and 55 minutes of waste into your process. You've not actually created any value within there, just through that automation. So value stream mapping is about identifying and seeing where you can deliver the most value. Right, measurement. Measurement, again, a lot of it comes down to tooling. So here's an example of a tool. The acronym is ELK, 3 tools. Elasticsearch, which was the original name for this particular set, Logstash and Kibana. And what these basically do is these go away, grab log files that you've got somewhere, take that data, scrape the data, provide it into some sort of information that then pushes it out onto a dashboard in a meaningful way. So, for example, you could do your value stream mapping through this, or you could identify the speed and rate at which you're doing deployments, or the return on what your quality investment is. So that's, yeah, measuring, that's great, but why are we measuring? What are we measuring? We've got to remember what it is that we're delivering at the end of the day. We're potentially working for companies that sell pharmaceuticals, or provide bank accounts, or make cars. So to tell them that our software, we've now captured 100 bugs this week and we've captured 50 bugs the week before, it means nothing. What they want to know is, how is this improving the safety of my car? How is this improving the safety of the drugs that we're delivering? So it's important as well to remember what it is. Oh, I did have a little animation there. What it is that you're actually delivering. What it is that you're doing it for and who it's for. So the key thing to remember is that it's about business value. I mentioned these things before: time to market, quality assurance, risk reduction, opportunity enhancement, cost reduction. It may be one of those, or it may be multiple of them, is the reason why you're trying to implement your DevOps. It's the reason why you are doing what you are doing. This pyramid here is the Gartner Metrics Pyramid, the DevOps Metrics Pyramid. First produced in 2015, I think, and updated in 2017. Widely accepted as a really good benchmark for actual measurements of business service and business capability. So it's a bit blurry on here, so I'll read them out. So at the top of the pyramid there, you've got business performance, customer value, organisational effectiveness, service quality, service velocity, and operational efficiency. Within them are a set of metrics, many of which you probably recognise. So it's things like market share, earnings, skills growth, collaboration, retention. These are the kinds of things that you really need to measure. These are the important things about your organisation, because these are the things that tell you whether your organisation is working to a high efficiency, whether it's delivering its capabilities in order to maximise time to market or quality assurance or risk reduction. And the things that your organisation wants to focus on are going to differ from organisation to organisation. It may be that your issues are around quality assurance, the uptime of your live production systems. It may be around security, you know, making sure somebody doesn't hack into your system. You need to meet GDPR. It's about the speed to market. You want to hit that same kind of delivery rate that Netflix has got, because you need to meet that kind of change in demand. Whatever the reason, it means that it's a different set, a different criteria of measurements that are important to you. You're not necessarily going to measure everything on there. You're going to concentrate on the things that are important to you. So for example, if it's a new startup organisation, then it may be around new business service enablement that's key, because you need to get those new business services out there, up and running as quickly as possible. Any delay in those services, you are losing a share of your customer base out there to your rivals, to your competitors. So in looking at that, the business performance and the new business service enablement, then time to market and quality assurance are going to be extremely important things. So those are factors that you're going to target on. So you're going to look carefully at your automation, you're going to look at your lean side of things and how you are delivering within that value, and whether you're delivering at a good cadence, at a good pace. And in the spirit of sharing, this is a case study from a client. And I'll bring this up because this provides an example as well about comms and why comms is important. So we went into this organisation in the beginning of 2018. And like a lot of organisations within DevOps, we provide a maturity matrix. We have an assessment. And so it's a series of questions. We measure, we mark against that, and we identify where there are strengths, where there are weaknesses, areas for improvement, and so on. But with this particular client, the out-of-the-box thing isn't necessarily the right thing. You have to find out what the demand is, what the need is from the client. So for this client, it was about bringing out a new service, putting out a new service, and it was about, as well, time to market, the time for releases. Typically they worked in a waterfall fashion and they were doing releases every 18 months. They wanted to go to every 3 months, with a future vision to potentially going every month. So we actually adjusted our maturity assessment according to their demand, according to their need, what it is that they wanted. And at each stage we assessed that maturity. And what you can see here is that gradual growth in their maturity. So on a scale out of 5, this was averaged across, and by the way, there are so many things involved in this, so many areas that are scored. They started out at an average of 1.8 and moved up to 3.2 by the end of the year. And they weren't finished. Work still continues to this day. But some of the things that they were implementing, some of them don't necessarily sound too technical, but they are all helped in terms of improving the way that they operated within a DevOps environment. So over here, we did the first assessment. One of the first things we did was look at comms and collaboration. Remember Conway's Law? So we did some work there about improving the way that teams communicated with each other, the way that they collaborated with each other. It was a cultural change that we had to make within there to get people to operate in a more open way and a more direct way. We looked at their release management practices. We looked at them from that value stream mapping perspective. We started to map out what was actually going on in there. So, culture, lean, first metrics created, measurement. So, within each one, we are implementing either culture or automation or lean processing or the measurement all the way along with all of these. And the key thing is not to concentrate on one area. With a lot of DevOps organisations, a lot of them think it's about the automation, it's about the tools. Let's get the tool set in. So they concentrate on just the automation. Well, of course, the danger there is because you've not leaned things up, because you've not changed your culture, all you're doing is automating all the bad stuff that you were doing before as well. What you want to do is you want to concentrate on getting the good stuff right and automating that. So, what does all of that mean? I talked a lot there, I'm out of breath. Talked a lot about what that means, columns, as it's come from Jez Humble. Well, there's another writer of this, principal writer, Gene Kim, also wrote this, The Phoenix Project. Hopefully some of you have heard this. So I'm giving you a bit of a reading list here, some recommended reading. And in The Phoenix Project, they speak about the 3 ways. What are those 3 ways? Well, you want dev and you want operations to work together. By the way, The Phoenix Project isn't a manual, it's written as an actual novel. So that makes it a bit different, at least. But in there they've got a scenario where they've got development and they've got operations, and there's this silo wall between them, as exists in so many organisations, and they need to operate in a more efficient way. They need some way of getting past those old problems of throwing things over the wall and the blame culture and it's not my problem and so on. So they brought it down to this, the 3 ways. It's about flow, systems thinking, passing things from development to operations. It's about feedback, providing fast, immediate and consistent feedback. And then it's about a culture of continual experimentation and learning. Now, from that, I'm hoping you can see where columns comes into it. Because that is all about a cultural change. And in order to get your flow and your feedback as quick as possible, you need to automate. But you also need to have lean thinking in the way that that operates, getting your feedback back as quickly as possible. It's also about measurement and metrics. That's how you get that feedback. Yeah? And it's about sharing through this experimentation and learning. So let's apply that to SAFe. In a safe way of working, we can have an increment planning session. We will prioritise our user stories. We will go through 2-week iterative development cycles, at the end of which we will provide demonstrations. So we flow through from the planning through to delivery within these 2-week cycles. We then, through the demos, we get business feedback. We also look at our value stream mapping to identify how we've done and how we've performed. And then from that, we can review the backlog. We take on a retrospective and we look at what it is that we're doing and what we're delivering. So that's how it was conjured up in the Phoenix Project, the 3 ways. This is another view. This is another perspective that you'll see around a lot, the DevOps Infinity Loop. And really it talks about those same things. It talks about this flow, it shows this flow that goes around. And it's a constant flow because it's providing the feedback as quickly as possible. It's not just a linear line that ends. And it's about that experimentation and learning. So from each time you do a release and you deploy and you operate and you monitor and you learn new things, so you plan for your code and build and you test and you release. It's that continuous cycle within there. Continuous. Here's an interesting fact. I mentioned as well about the automation. If you concentrate too much on one thing, you are potentially doing the wrong thing. And here's an example of this. It's still very prevalent today with a lot of organisations when they're going on to DevOps who immediately think, right, let's just get the tools in, let's get Jenkins in, let's get Cucumber in, let's get Chef in, let's use Ansible. All of these tools, and they put them in. You know what? Tools are easy. You install them, you go on a few courses about them, you learn them, you configure them, and off they run. And that's great. This was a Gartner report done back in 2015, September 2015, where they looked at the reasons for failure of DevOps transformations. 5% was down to information issues, and 8% down to technology issues. That's a very small amount. That's a fine. That's a very small amount of a reason for a failure around technology and around information. The biggest areas for failure, 37% was down to process issues. In other words, they didn't consider lean. They didn't measure what they were doing on their processes. 50% was down to people issues. Over half of these were failed due to people issues. Hang on a moment. That's all the people working together as a collective, and that's their behaviours and how they work. In other words, they forgot to address the culture. And it's as much about cultural change as it is about technological change. It's about a change of mindset and the change in the way that you think and the way that you operate. If all you're going to do is stick in automation and still operate in the same way, you're still going to have the same failings and the same mistakes and the same issues.
What's the difference between the people and the behaviours?
People and behaviours do come together. They come together as culture. What this means in here, where it talks about people issues, is probably more than likely it's down to acceptance. It's down to people not receiving the training, or people not accepting the training, or not accepting a new way of working, going back to old habits, that kind of thing, which is linked in a way to process issues, linked very closely to the process issues, which is why I point those two out. You're talking about 87% of failures here is down to culture. So, what does that mean? What does all of that mean? And here comes the unsatisfactory answer. We've spoken about DevOps being about comms. Widely accepted, that's what Jez Humble tells us. We accept it. And we've seen the reasons why we need to introduce comms. So our culture is made up of all of our people. And it's fair to say that if a person moves out of an organisation, it changes that culture. If a new person comes in, it changes that culture, especially if that's somebody who is highly influential. The cultural changes don't necessarily come from internally. They can come from externally, due to market conditions, due to regulation, due to changes within the industry itself. So, what this means is that the types of culture, what we have as a culture within organisations, because we're not all the same people, and we don't all operate the same way, and we don't all have the same business, means that they are all going to be different. So we've got an infinite number of cultures that are working out there. We've also looked at the automation. There's a large number of tools out there, and not everybody is using the exact same tool set. And some tools will eventually die as new ones come along, new capabilities. Lean thinking. Lean thinking is about leaning up your processes. And the way we lean those is according to what our values are, whether our values are about the time to market, about the quality of what we're delivering. It's about whether we operate in a microservices kind of way, or if we operate in a monolithic kind of way, or something in between on that gradient scale. So again, there's an infinite number of possibilities on there. In terms of the measurement, we've seen a large number of measures try to be brought down to what that business value is, but the business value to every organisation is different. What are your key measures? What is it that you're measuring? So every organisation is different in terms of what they're measuring. And everybody is going to share their experiences in a different way. So we've got infinite culture, huge amount of tools in multiple combinations. Your lean processing is going to be unique. Your measurements are going to be different. Your sharing is going to be different. What is DevOps? There will never be an answer, because every organisation is unique. Every organisation is different. So it's no longer about asking what is DevOps. You need to ask why DevOps. Why are you implementing your DevOps? What is important to you? Because the DevOps that you create within your organisation is going to be unique to your organisation. No two instances of DevOps are ever going to be the same. So don't think you can go to another organisation, see how they do it, and go, right, we'll do that over here, because I can guarantee it will fail. You cannot do that. You have to tailor and create your DevOps according to your conditions, and you have to allow it to change, to live, to breathe, according to changes in your culture and your automation and so on. So it's about keeping calms. It's about remembering those 5 things and keeping them balanced. Not concentrating on one particular area, looking at something across all of those areas. And finally, it's about the 3 ways. It's about that flow, it's about the feedback, and it's about the culture of continual experimentation. Said it was going to be an unsatisfactory answer. Sorry folks, no golden bullet here. So, from me, that's all folks. Just a couple of final points. If anybody wants to know any more, that's my email address. Very happy for you to get in touch with me to find out any more information. I'm also on LinkedIn. Please connect to me there. So if this is something new and you want to learn more, please reach out. If, however, in giving that talk, and I've seen a couple of people nodding along, and you think, yeah, you just taught me to suck eggs, please do still get in touch with me, because we are desperate for people. We need people with DevOps experience. So please, if you want to come and work for an exciting organisation such as Accenture, and believe me, it is a fantastic organisation with a great culture, then please get in touch with me and we'll see what we can do.
vMost, it's a change management process that I got introduced to about a couple of years ago. I was working up in Scotland with a company called Registers of Scotland. It's the Scottish Land Registry, the equivalent of. And it just seemed that one of those common sense things that you don't think of until someone tells you about it. And I thought, I have to start doing something with this. It's kind of where this talk came from. So I'm going to start off with a bit of an introduction about me and where I've actually come from and how I've got to the point that I'm at now. I graduated, as people did, back in the late 90s and thought, well, my degree's lovely, but it's worth nothing. Joined the dot-com boom, headed off down to London, hence Big Ben in there, and ended up writing a lot of this stuff. Moved on, did a bit of database work, way too many projects over quite a few years, and ended up in the land of Agile. In the course of all that, ended up working with some people like these, from some places like his. Except back then it was Anderson's. I think they stopped being Anderson's some time back. Quite a long time back. Long time back.
Before the millennium.
Yeah. It was before the millennium. It was late 90s, and it was the days of sharp suits and whatever else, and hence the looks there. Learned a lot as I was going through, but one thing it bugged me all the way through there. It's why do we need consultants to implement change? Because everywhere I went, we always seem to have consultant for this, consultant for that. So why is that? First off, is it some sort of black magic? Or is it something that only really clever people can do? I just didn't know. But I really wanted to find out, because that seemed to be a common factor with all of them. Sometime later, after a lot more of this good stuff, and this time I'm working more with people like this, because different places like these. And if you haven't worked with places like these, do get in touch with them. They're absolutely brilliant organisations to work with. I'm not saying that Accenture isn't. Just a different flavour of brilliant. Working with these guys, had my eureka moment, if you like, probably 10 years back, that sort of time. There wasn't any black magic about it, and you don't need to be a genius, although in fairness, quite a lot of them really are. The big secret about this whole thing is people keep making the same mistakes, and they make them over and over and over again. We have this great vision. I mean, business leaders, brilliant. Oh, fantastic, I'm going to do that, I'm going to sell this, it's going to be brilliant. And they're quite good at the team tactics, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we can juggle this, and we can do that, and then we'll make this much money over here, then I can redeploy these people, and that's all good stuff as well. But what's missing is the bit in the middle, and they just don't hang together properly. So, how do we fix this is the question I was trying to address. This is probably about 10 years back, like I say. Does anyone recognise this chap? Now, it's a bit of a long shot, I'm not sure if you would or not. It's a chap called John Cotter. He was a leading light in business, well, still is a leading light in business change. He's a professor at Harvard Business School, and in 1996, and the reason that sticks in my head is it's when my journey started on this path, he wrote this book called Leading Change. And he set out a series of principles on how, based on his observations, I think, as he describes it, of over 100 different organisations going through different change processes and whatever else, things that they've all had in common, and all the change transformations of every flavour. What are the guiding things that you need? And he ended up with something called Cotter's 8 steps. They start from sort of establishing a sense of urgency, then building a guiding coalition to drive it through the business, creating a vision of where you want to get to, communicating that vision down through the organisation, empowering others, hence we're talking about this cultural thing, echoing a lot of what Stephen said. So empowering others to make the changes, start getting some short-term wins in so that you can demonstrate that this change has actually got a chance. Capital or consolidating the gains that you've made so that we can start really winning. And then the final bit, which is hugely important, and I'm going to echo everything that's detailed about this, embedding cultural changes. It's so important. It's going to take a little digression from where I was planning on going. Has anyone heard the expression "culture eats strategy for breakfast"? Thought you would have done it. Yeah, it's attributed to a chap called Peter Drucker, who was another leading light in change. I doubt it was him. Because first reference I can find to it is probably early mid 2000s, and I know Peter Drucker would have been 90 odd at that time. So sadly no longer with us. So it probably wasn't him. I mean, it's become associated with him either way. So the culture eats strategy for breakfast. It's basically saying that if you don't get the embedded change in an organisation, you don't change the way that organisation's thinking, it doesn't matter how good your strategy is, it doesn't matter what you put in place, it's going to revert. And I've witnessed this. I'm not going to know name the company, but this company I was working with a few years back. Spent 18 months with them, got them from, oh my god, the world's falling apart, to, okay, we're fine. Working with some big automotive clients of theirs, as far as I'm going to go and say who they are, but so rescued the contracts with them, reorganised entirely how the delivery of that team went, reorganised how the sales force went, everything else. 18 months later, looked at it was great, said my goodbyes, thanks very much. And a year and a half later, you wouldn't recognise that anyone had been there. It was back to exactly how it was, everything had changed. A couple of people had left from the chief exec of that organisation had left. The culture wasn't properly embedded through the rest of the organisation, and it went back to exactly how it was. So it doesn't matter how good you think your change is, if you haven't got that culture bit right, it's going to keel over again. So anyway, back to where I was going with this. The area that I like focusing on is this bit here, from the corporate vision down to empowering others, a little bit on from there, but that's more or less it. And what is interesting about this is creating a vision and empowering others, they map really, really nicely to Cruise vision and the Minions tactics. Communicating the vision is the one bit that bugs me about this change model, is it smacks too much of the people at the top telling the people down below what to do. I dislike that, and when I've got introduced to vMost a couple of years back, it really, really smacked home. If we start from the point that you have the vision, you have the tactics, and you haven't got anything else in between, it starts off really, really well. You end up with your grand visionary, saying to the team, we're going to go off in this direction, everything's really G'd up, everyone goes for it, and things look great for a while. But then something happens, and I think anyone who's been in a senior stakeholder position or worked with senior stakeholders or got married will will recognise this. Before long, we all suffer from the ooh shiny moment, and the thing that we're working on is great. But, oh, I want to do that. I want to go and get the next thing, and I want the next thing, and I want the next thing. And you go very, very quickly from everyone going in one direction to somebody comes along and says, oh, I've got this great idea. That vision kind of fits into that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that to jump along my idea. And we split the dev team, or the delivery team, or whatever team it might be. At the moment, that might actually work, but then that happens. And then before long, you've got everyone pulling in every different way. And the one team which could deliver everything brilliantly is suddenly trying to deliver so many things it can't. And you end up with one inevitable result. You've got a burnt out team, totally lacking morale and effectively delivering nothing because they simply can't. And this is where vMost really adds the value for me. So come back to our little triangle with the vision and tactics. Then we add in a few more layers. So we start off with, rather than going directly down, we have mission, objectives and strategy. So what do I mean by that? So the vision, it's our view of where we want to get to. I think we're kind of clear on that. We know that we want to be this thing in the future for the business or whatever. On screen is quite a famous vision statement from a famous company. It's to be Earth's most customer-centric company where customers can find and discover anything they might want to buy online. No prizes, but anyone guess who it is?
Amazon.
Absolutely, yeah. Amazon are quite obviously following something similar to this because they also have a mission statement. I prefer it to be a couple of different ones, but I mean they obviously need to get it into something for a front page of a website. Their mission statement, which is the journeys that they're going to go on to achieve that vision, is where is it? Yeah, here we go. Striving to offer our customers the lowest possible prices, the best available selection at the utmost convenience. So what they're saying is to get on this journey, we're going to go on for 3 missions. One is to offer low prices. One is to give a high selection, and one is to offer convenience. Now, I don't know what their objectives are, obviously, because they haven't shared them with me, but, and they change. But I can hazard a guess at these. And the objectives are, so we've got our missions set out. We've got our missions set out. What do we need to achieve on those missions? What objectives are we setting ourselves at a lower level? And examples might include, in Amazon's case as a guess, reducing the storage cost to a certain percentage of unit cost. So how do we get the cost down as far as we can? Dispatching a certain percentage of orders within 4 hours. So how can we get the delivery time down as quickly as we can? And meeting the needs of a certain number of small companies. I think there's an advert on TV at the minute which makes it really, really clear. Something like 50% of all stuff sold by Amazon comes from small businesses. So they have to get the needs of these small businesses met to be able to meet the wide range of goods that they sell to us. The next step down is the strategy. How are we going to meet those objectives? So this is quite low level stuff, but I always end up in conversations with leadership when I'm working with companies around, do I really mean this? So is a corporate restructure, is that really so low down in the change tree? Is it an agile transformation, is that so low down? And the answer is yes, because each of these is a tool to achieve something. It's nothing more than that. If a company says, or someone says to you, we're doing an agile transformation because our neighbours are doing it and it's the best thing ever, wrong answer. Has anyone here been involved in the last few years, put your hands up if you have, in either an agile transformation or a corporate restructure? And can you keep your hands up if you knew at the beginning of that exactly what the business objectives were and how you're going to contribute to them? 2 hands up, that's 2 hands remaining. One not sure, possibly. It's fairly common, about 2/3 of hands go down at that point because people are doing things and they don't know why. Tactics, it's the last bit, it's the minions, and the team actually knows what they're doing, working out how to deliver something. So all of that comes down to, so VMost helps align work with goals. It's all it's doing. It's not the only way of doing it, but it is a very, very nice way of aligning what the team is doing with the business goals. And it does that through a couple of different processes. For me, it's separation of responsibility, exactly what Steve was talking about earlier again. So many parallels in the talks. So the vision and the mission are coming from the business up on high. They're saying what we need to be, where we need to, how we need to get there. The strategy and the team the strategy and tactics have to be set by the team. Because when I'm working with a bunch of dev teams, I don't know how to write that code. I don't know how to go about selling this stuff. It's not my area. So there's no point me trying to micromanage and tell people how to do it. So the separation of responsibility into these areas, and they end up always, if you're doing it right, there's area of negotiation in the middle. Typically it centres on the objectives, it goes up and down a bit, but it means that the business leadership want to get somewhere, the team thinks they can get there doing this, can't quite meet on that, what if you do that, just shift these around, and you end up with a negotiated strategy across the whole business. It also makes it very, very agile as well in terms of the way of working, because it sets out, at the top we know what the vision is. Are we on the right mission? Well, we think we are, but we find a better way of doing this. Okay, fine, we can change that because we know it's going to meet our mission, our vision. Further down, have we got the right objectives? Well, if we do that, it's actually going to contribute to our mission a bit better. So all the way down, it allows all these changes because you can cross-reference them against the things further up the change tree, if you like. And it allows us to measure, are we doing the right thing at all given times? So the whole focus on this is about making things a bit more leaner, but dealing with the culture side of things. Are we doing the right thing? Not necessarily are we doing it in the right way, but are we tackling the thing that's actually going to add value to us?
Isn't this becoming a little bit fluid as well now? Because sometimes vision is actually coming from the bottom up. It
can be, but the decision makers, the ones who are accountable for the business, need to actually make decisions at the top. All of this can come from, I spend a lot of time going through helping people create product backlogs, understanding product management. Ideas can come from absolutely anywhere, but someone has to be accountable for those ideas and set what the direction is actually going. And much as I'd love it to be the team at the bottom, unless you're in a cooperative or something like that, it's simply not going to happen. The reality is that there are some stakeholders the shareholders who appoint a management team who are accountable for delivering that. Like it or not, that's just the reality of business. So they have to be, even if it's not where the ideas are coming from, they have to be the ones who do set out on that direction and know where they're going to go to. So it's taking us from this thing where the business leadership is wow, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to get there, and the team running off in every which way that they can to try and deliver things with a variety of different tactics and probably failing in the process, to having a common strategic direction which has been agreed across the whole business. Everybody buys into this. Another way of looking at it, and I can't believe how long it took me to find this picture, is that we go from everyone pulling in different ways to everyone working towards a single sustainable change. That's pretty much where I'm going to go, or leave it there, but I'm going to leave you with 3 takeaways as well. First one is don't change for that reason. Single biggest advice I can give anybody thinking about changing anything. If you haven't got a good reason for doing it and you don't know what you're trying to achieve, stop. Second one is management own the problem, team own the solution. Separate responsibilities, use that strategic direction, let the team work out the detail. Don't try and micromanage the team. Again, you'll go flat on your backside, you won't be able to cope with it, and everything will keel over, and you'll end up with a fight between you and the team. People will walk out and it will never ends prettily. And the last one, vMost isn't the only thing around that will help you with this. I've been doing it for years without vMost, but it is a really, really nice tool. If you're struggling to work out how to get from a vision to a set of aligned tactics, use vMost. And that's where I'm going to stop.